Hello and welcome to Worklog. I'm Sean Hickman. I'm an indie iOS developer who makes an app called Sofa, which helps you to be more intentional with your downtime. And Worklog is a podcast where I just kind of share my journey building Sofa and turning this into an indie app business. So I cover things I've learned, things I'm working on, all that kind of stuff. And the stuff that I'm going to cover in this episode is it's going to touch on some Apple news and some rumors for iOS 19. I'm getting into the home stretch of my podcast player launching and have some updates to share there. And then I want to talk about the marketing prep that I am doing for the launch, which is getting closer and closer every single day. So that is what we're going to be covering today. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm actually recording this with two cameras right now. I have the Osmo Pocket 3 and the Osmo Action 5 Pro. And the reason I'm doing both is because this whole setup, I want to be as fuss-free as possible, as simple as possible. I even set up a light right now because it's getting dark. I don't even want to do that. I just kind of want to record, but it is getting a little dark. But the Osmo Pocket has been, I've been having some reliability issues with it, and mostly it won't always turn on correctly, and sometimes I have to reset it, and then it won't focus on me unless I have the active track thing on where it moves around. But that moving around is really distracting. So what I'm doing is I'm recording with both so that I at least have a backup. But so far, I'll talk about the Action 5 in a little bit. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. I may have to invest in a larger camera setup at some point. We'll see. I just want something that's not fussy. But anyway, let's talk about some Apple stuff. So first thing is iOS 19 design updates. So this rumor came out a couple of days ago. It looks like 4 days ago when I'm looking at it. And basically the rumor is that iOS 19 is going to have a bunch of new visual changes to the OS. Basically as large as when iOS 7 came out, right? And went away from the skeuomorphic design to a more flat style. And the rumors are that this is going to be taking the inspiration from Vision OS, and Vision Pro, and that's going to start to bleed into iOS. And it looks like some people did some renders and videos and stuff like that. This stuff is just fun to talk about and fun to look at. I love UI stuff. Seeing as I'm an iOS developer and I actually have an app that I work on, and if this does happen, this is going to impact me quite a bit. What do I think about it? I would say I do not own a Vision Pro. I've used one once in the Apple Store demo, and then as part of development, there's a simulator you can use, so you can see the OS, you can see the design and stuff like that. And I could definitely see parts of it coming over and inspiring parts of iOS and iPadOS and stuff like that. Specifically menus and maybe some UI elements. And I'm thinking more the kind of fundamental UI elements. So you have text inputs, toggles, buttons, all that kind of stuff. So I could see that stuff getting a little more Vision OS-y in a way. And it's funny, when this came out, this made me think I immediately thought of the Apple Sports app, which I use all the time. It's really good because I follow different sports in Philly. But the menus in that, so if you don't have that app, you can go check it out. But the menus in that they're not standard iOS menus. They're very custom. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that kind of looks like Vision OS. And I wonder if if the Apple team is using apps like the Sports app and then the new the Invitation. Oh, Invites, yeah. And even stuff like Invites, where the UI here is a little more playful and experimental than you would see from the standard system apps. And I wonder if they're using that for a, just like a little testing ground for the UI to try stuff out, which to me makes total sense. So I see this and I get excited as like a user, because it's anytime there's like UI redesigns and stuff like that, it's just fun. And it gets people excited too. So, people get excited for this kind of stuff. On a practical basis, I think like a lot of Vision OS, the design intent, and again, I'm saying this, I haven't like actually, I don't own one and use one, but it seems like the design intent is based around the Chrome or the UI fitting into your environment, right? Because it's this spatial computing. So you have this like see-through glass texture for like windows and stuff like that, so that it's not blocking a bunch of stuff, but it kind of, you can see through it and all that. So that's kind of like the idea. And if you think of that concept, you don't necessarily have to take that, wholesale into your iPhone or the iPad or something, but you can definitely take ideas from it and inspiration from it. So I think it's cool to see it. And, we saw it with like iOS inspired a lot of Mac OS stuff. And, initially Mac OS inspired iOS and then it kind of went back and all that stuff. So this is just kind of a forever, cycle of stuff that happens. But I think it's pretty cool. But I'll be curious, like the extent of how far this goes, because me and a lot of other developers could end up having a very busy summer, kind of implementing all this stuff. And usually when you use like system components from Apple, you kind of get this stuff for free. It just kind of like changes automatically. But if you do anything more custom, it may not work. And the thing I'm thinking for me is that Sofa has like a very extensive theming system. So there's literally over 100 different themes that you can choose from, light mode, dark mode, all that kind of stuff. And I struggled to bring that to Vision OS because I was like, well, how much do I theme? How much do I not theme? What do I do here? And I think I landed at like a nice middle ground, which is fine. But I think that I'll be curious the impact of how far Apple goes with iOS 19 and, what impact that could have on apps that have much more custom UI, right? And in my case, do a lot of custom theming and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens, but always fun to see this kind of stuff. The other thing was there was an AirPods 4 video from Spike Jonze, which was, it's like a, I don't know, 5-minute. It's a commercial, right? Like if you think it's selling a product, but I recommend checking it out. It's really good. I was, it's pretty amazing how like, writers, actors, directors it is literally a commercial, but I was like sucked in. I was sucked into the story and what was happening. So, really good. I'll put a link in the description for that, but, I'm not in the market for new AirPods. I have these are AirPod 3s. I tried AirPod Pros, but number one, I don't like the the rubber sensation in my ear, or the silicone, whatever that is, and they fall out all the time too. So like, if I'm on like a phone call and I'm talking, they'll just fall out eventually. They just like start creeping out. So I find that the regular AirPods, AirPod 3s, they sound great and they fit my ear very well. So I don't need new AirPods, but I like the video commercial, whatever the hell it was. The other thing, DJI Action 5 Pro. This whole small talk section is just me randomly talking about stuff. So I picked up the Action 5 Pro. So it's a little action camera. And again, I know that like YouTubers, and I did this in the past where I would use bigger, like more professional cameras. And I'm trying to have something that's a lot less fussy and just more like I can just kind of grab it and use it. In the same way that I have my Leica Q2 over here as it's my only like photography camera. It's a fixed lens, and I just love, like, I don't have to think about what lens I'm going to use or do I bring multiple lenses or whatever. I just grab the camera and I go. And I want to have the same experience with the video stuff too, because maybe I'm doing a sit down thing like this, right, where I set up a light, I have a microphone and stuff like that. But maybe, I don't know, I'm going to drive somewhere and run an errand, but I still want to make a video. And I don't want to be like, oh, well, the big camera, I got to like rig it up and all this stuff. Like, I like these little cameras because I think the image quality is good enough. And then the integration with like the DJI mics is really good. And I've just been struggling with the Pocket 3. There's probably something wrong with it, to be honest with you. I might have to like do maybe like a warranty thing with DJI, but it's like, oh my God, now I got to like fill out a form and send it in, and being lazy. What are you going to do? But so far I like the Action 5 Pro quite a bit. It's definitely wider than I would want. Like, I actually prefer the Osmo Pocket is like a 20 millimeter roughly field of view, which I think like for vlogging and stuff is like plenty wide. And then the Action 5, the way I have it set up, it's around like a 17. It's very wide, and it feels a little exaggerated at times, but yeah, so we'll see. But cameras are fun. I love this kind of stuff. Good times. And then the last little thing, Severance Season 2 finale, as I record this, is tomorrow. And gang, I'm not going to spoil anything, so don't worry about it. I'm very hyped for this. And the fact that they said it's going to be a very long episode, very excited. Very excited. Okay, so now let's get into, that's enough small talk. Let's get into what I've been working on. And again, so I've been building a podcast player into my app Sofa. And honestly, it feels like I'm literally building a second app and adding it into my existing app. That's how much like stuff has gone into this. But last week I did a video about like me, I'm in launch mode now. Like, I've kind of finished the major features, and now I'm like purely focused on bug fixes and polishing and all that kind of stuff. No new features at this point, like just trying to get this thing out. And the past week has been like I put in like a ton of hours and made a ton of progress and fixing bugs and really polishing up like the podcast player screen, specifically with adding different kinds of metadata. And, it's like when you look at a lot of different podcast players, they all have very different ideas, not very different, but they all have different ideas on what you should see when you're, looking at the player. Should you see the title and the podcast name? Should you see metadata info about it, all that kind of stuff? Or do you hide that away in different areas? And so I kind of riffed on that quite a bit over the past week, and I think I'm at a good spot. And one of the things that I polished up was streaming versus downloading. So like, you don't always have a strong connection, or maybe it's not downloaded or whatever. And say you're on cell service and the podcast is like 2 hours long, and you don't want to wait to download it just to listen to it. Like, you just want to start listening, and then, it like kind of seamlessly downloads and then continues and all that stuff. So I did a lot of work implementing stuff like that, and then showing you when you're listening. Because this is something that has always like been a little nitpick with me with podcast players. Is like, I don't know if is the thing I'm listening to, am I streaming it or am I is it downloaded? And I just wanted to show very clearly on the player, like, yes, this is downloaded, or no, you're streaming this, or it's downloading right now, that kind of stuff. So those little details are now part of the podcast player screen, which is nice, and, you know, polished up the way chapters are handled, and how you kind of navigate between those chapters. And then also, one of the things was like, so essentially, if you listen to a podcast that has chapters in it, right? So you can kind of jump between different sections, similar to, say you watch a YouTube video and there's chapters underneath of it, like this video will have. Podcasts can do that, and I would say most podcast players at this point do that as well, or support it. And there are some podcasts that I listen to where they would show an image along with a chapter, but then as they're talking within a chapter, it would be like, oh, blah, 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 see image, and then a new image appears as you're doing that. And I was struggling, like, how, like, where is that data within the audio file? Like, what is the marker for that and all that kind of stuff? And, man, I was fighting with that for a while. And then this is where, like, you know, I'm Googling stuff. I'm looking at, like, the spec for, like, the way you embed this kind of metadata in audio files and stuff like that. And I'm, like, struggling to find an answer. And this is where this is the very first time I used the research mode in ChatGPT. What the heck's it called? Deep Research, right? And so I used Deep Research for this. And this is where, like, I was literally at the end of my rope. I was like, what? I don't understand what's going on. Maybe I just won't support it. And I just wrote, like, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what my app does now. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here, I'm trying to find like this extra image metadata, and here's like an app that people use. Like one of the apps is from Margot Arment, the forecast app. Like I was like, people use this app Forecast to create this metadata, because I was even looking for stuff around the Forecast app, and I like couldn't find this information. And so I used Deep Research for this, and it friggin' solved it. Like, not solved it in like, here's the code, but it explained what I was looking for. So essentially, like, I don't know if anyone's going to care about this, but essentially there's different metadata within an audio file when you do this kind of stuff. So there's a chapter frame, and that chapter frame can have different metadata within it. And it can say like, oh, okay, here's like a title, here's an image, here's a link URL, whatever. And then like it'll have timestamps with it too. So like the start time, end time. So then that way I can read that data, and other podcast players can read that chapter data and then kind of build that stuff out. And that's how you can jump between stuff. But the trick is there's also a table of contents frame. And what the app Forecast does is there's like a, I guess it's like it's not like a hack. It's like, it's totally valid. But if you don't put a chapter within a table of contents frame, so it's just like kind of a floating chapter out there, that is an invisible chapter. And what you can do is you can read that data and say it's invisible, right? Or I have to kind of like track what's visible and what's not on my own within the app. But then I can just show the visible chapters and then still show the images for the invisible chapters. Is this making sense? This is a terrible podcast topic, gang. But anyway, I use these AI tools like quite a bit, like many people do, but I never used a Deep Research thing because I never had a use for it up until this point. I was like, well, it seems really cool, but I literally have no idea what I would use it for. And I was genuinely blown away with this, because this is where like I was Googling stuff for a significant amount of time, right? Trying different things, like looking in different forums and whatever. And then this thing, I just like kind of you know, I just kind of like dumped on it, and it said, oh, it did research in 4 minutes and 41 seconds, and it had 19 sources. That's the other thing. It provides the sources for where it's getting this stuff, and then I can jump and like verify things. Unbelievable. Just really impressive, and I was very happy that that worked, because I was getting real frustrated. But anyway, Deep Research, gang. How about it? Yeah. So anyway, so the past week I've put in a lot of hours, and that's an intentional thing too. Like, I don't normally do that. I normally work like pretty normal hours, I would say. But then when there's these kind of pushes, it's like, okay, I'm going to be launching very soon, and there's this kind of like push to get to the finish line. That's when I will just kind of like go pretty hard, work-wise and hour-wise, and I can't sustain it. Like, I'm pretty tired right now, because for the past week it's been, a little more intense. But it's kind of like, I was explaining this to my wife earlier, where it's like, when you get the energy to like do some larger chore at home that you don't want to do, like you never want to do it, but it's like some weird random day you wake up, you're like, yeah, I kind of want to do that. I feel like knocking that out. And it's like, oh, you got to do it right then, right? Like, because you have that energy and you have the motivation. So it's like, go do it, because once that energy is gone, you're never going to do it. And that's kind of how it feels with this, which is like, there's all these little things to do to get this thing launched. And it's like, I'm motivated, and like, it's just time to kind of hustle through it. So I don't mind hustling through stuff in short bursts, but definitely can't sustain it, because it's exhausting. But yeah, so it's good. I'm feeling good about where the app's at. There's still some rough edges I'm working through, but it's getting there. One of the other things I had to like really figure out is performance for people who have like very large podcast collections. And I have one beta tester who helped out quite a bit with just sharing their data with this stuff, so I could really test it out. And so this is like, imagine you are subscribed to 100 podcasts, roughly, right? And some of those podcasts update every day. Some of them update multiple times a day. And it's a significant amount of data to be generating on a daily basis within the app. And the way I kind of, I don't listen to that many podcasts, right? I think I listen to a decent amount, but not 100. And this was showing like signs of stress within the app, like how I was creating backup files, how I was sharing data with widgets, how like you even manage like certain settings for podcasts, where I was trying to figure out like, how do you add like an episode limit setting and stuff like that. So this one beta tester really helped me to figure that stuff out with like real data. And I say the app can now easily handle that kind of volume. With really should be minimal issues. I'm sure I'm going to run into more stuff as once I launch it and more people use it, I'm sure I'm going to get a wider array. But it's definitely, I've learned a lot that people listen to podcasts very differently. Like, there can be kind of wild swings. There's some people like, I just listen to one show and it's on once a week. And other people are listening to dozens who maybe post daily and sometimes multiple times a day. So, so there's definitely a wide gap here, but it's been great and it's like, I'd rather figure all that stuff out now before it launches. So that, because if the app can handle that kind of volume, then, for the most people who listen to a handful of podcasts, it's going to be not a problem at all. So So that's been good. Lots of stuff there. Did tons of work on the onboarding screen too. I was gonna post a little video about that. Cause like the onboarding screen was interesting. It's like, I'm not a fan of, okay, so I come from the design world, and designers love to design onboarding screens, right? So when they're doing something, we got to onboard people to this experience, and they will love it. They will all that stuff, right? So designers love to create very beautiful, complex onboarding workflows. And when you see people use this stuff in the wild, a lot of people just blast right through that crap, and they don't want to, they see it as like an ad or something. It's like they downloaded the app to do a certain thing, and now you're presenting this whole, basically like blocker in front of them, and they're just trying to get through it. And Sofa doesn't have really any kind of onboarding screens intentionally. There are major gaps right now, but that's like a further down the line thing that I want to fix. But when it comes to the podcast, I feel like this was an opportunity to start dipping my toe into this to make onboarding for podcasts a little bit simpler and more like, it's a major feature in the app. And what I think the other thing too is like, you can turn this feature off. And if you turn this feature off, you would never know that there's podcasts in Sofa. And again, that is by design too, because if you want to just use Sofa for keeping track of books to read, totally fine. You don't have to use podcasts or any of that stuff. But if you do want those things, it is there. But this is such a big feature that I do want to promote it to people within the app. And so basically it's two screens. So it's an initial like welcome screen that says you can listen to podcasts in Sofa. Then there's two buttons that say you can do this. Do you want to do it or do you not want to do it? And then from there, you pick a couple settings, and then I pull in like the top 25 podcasts on iTunes, and then you can pick if you want to subscribe to any of those, and then then you're done, right? It's really easy. So that was fun to work on and to kind of get ironed out. But I'll be posting. I'm going to be talking about this later because I'm going to be doing a different kind of video, a little like walkthrough video, and you'll see it in that one. So that'll be coming out at some point. The last thing I did was I was testing importing podcast files. I think it's OPML. OPML files. So essentially, if you say you listen to podcasts and another podcast, most podcasts you can export the podcast that you have into it's a OPML file, and then so I allow people to import that file, and you can also export from Sofa too. But you can import that file so that you can easily like jump over, and you don't have to like manually add stuff. So I was doing testing with that kind of stuff too. So lots of like heavy work this week. But I think things are in a good spot, and I'm very happy with it. So the home stretch stuff is so I'll say this, all of the known bugs should be fixed. There's probably other bugs I don't know about, but the known bugs are fixed. So what I'm going to be working on, like the home stretch here, is I have to update the paywall within the app to highlight the podcast stuff that'll be there. I also have to block those some of the premium podcast features within the app. So if you're not a Super Sofa subscriber, some of those features will just be blocked. But most of the podcast stuff is going to be free. I also have to figure out, like, I have a mostly ironed out, but I have to create the final set of like what is free and what is not for the podcast stuff. And if you're listening to this now, the podcast player is free. Like you'll be able to listen to podcasts for free, create lists, all that kind of stuff. The things I'm most likely going to be blocking behind the paywall are going to be chapter selection for the podcast player, and then the ability to set individual settings per podcast. So like there's global settings for the podcast, but if you want to like tweak settings for specific shows, that is also going to be a paid feature. So, which honestly I feel like it's pretty generous. Like most of it's going to be free, so you'll be good. There's some Vision OS UI issues I have to fix. I have to add some analytics, just basic stuff. Analytics is like a whole big topic too. But mostly, like, I'm not going to be keeping track of what shows people listen to. But I will be, I just want to know, like, are people using the podcast player, right? Like, are they essentially using it? Are they creating lists and using lists within there? Are they, using smart lists, all that kind of stuff? So I have to iron out like exactly what I'm going to be tracking there, but I have to do that. And then just more testing. So there's really not much left to do here, which is good, in terms of like the app itself. But yeah, definitely on the home stretch here. Okay, so that's what I've been working on. It's been a busy week. Now, the marketing prep I'm doing, so, I'm in this home stretch, and there's a couple things I have to balance here. One is like I have to finish the app, right? Like I have to get the app ready to go. So there's that, and I'm in the process of doing that. But then there's the marketing stuff I have to do. And there's a couple things I plan on doing, and some of this is based on like stuff I've done in the past and that I think has worked well. And then some is like some newer things I want to try. But the first thing I'm going to do is I have to make a landing page for like on the website. And this is essentially, I did this with Sofa 4.0 it was actually like last April or May. Because previously I would create like a press kit, and I would use Notion for this, and Notion actually worked really well. But you could use anything, like you use Google Doc or PDF, whatever. You need some kind of prop to share with people. But what I did for Sofa 4.0 is I actually just made a landing page on the website, because at that time I was like sharing what I was working on anyway publicly, so it's not like this big reveal. And I'm doing that now anyway. And it just outlined like all the major things coming for Sofa 4.0, and I had like a demo video in there so you could see that. And that was so useful for tons of reasons. One was when I was reaching out to the press, I could just share that link and they could see it. If I had to update it, I think that's the other thing too, is like if you send out like a PDF and you want to update it, you got to send another PDF. Whereas if it's a link on your, a page on your website, like you just update it. It was great for promotion, like leading up. I actually had it live before the launch so people could see what was going on and what was coming. And then it even became useful in like support emails from people where they would say, it would be really great if Sofa did this, right? And I was like, oh, it actually does. And here's this page with information about it. So I'm going to be doing that again for the podcast stuff. So I'm going to create this like landing page for the podcast player. And, but I'm going to be pairing that with, so like the demo video I did for Sofa 4.0 was more like, I would say like short commercial. With this one for the podcast, I kind of want to record it the way I'm recording this kind of stuff, and more like vloggy. And I want to do it in a very like linear fashion. So I'm going to literally like have, I have like a test device here, and I'm just going to like, wipe Sofa on this and start from scratch, so that people who see it from the very beginning, you're going to see the onboarding screen. I'm going to go through all that stuff. And I want to walk through this in a linear way to show like, oh, here's how you add podcasts, and here's how you listen to podcasts. Here's how you manage the up next queue. here's how you listen in CarPlay, right? Like all these different things. And here's how you change settings. And so I want to make that video, but then pair it with the landing page and have them be very in sync with each other. And so as you're, if you watch the video and then read the page, they literally go in the same order, right? So it feels like you do this and then you do this. So it's almost like a set of instructions in a way. So that's how I want to treat this one. And I think this will be helpful for all the same reasons, right? Like reaching out to the press, promoting it online, like social media and stuff like that. And then for support, like not even like before, but even after, like if people are like, oh, how do I do podcasts? Like it almost becomes a support page, or like a help page for how you do all this stuff. So I also have to write support articles too, but I'll do that. So I'm excited to do that. And I want to do that. Like I want to record the video first so that it makes sense. Like, so I can kind of mold the page around the video. I think that'll make sense. But I have like most of it kind of outlined what I'm going to talk about with that. And then I do want to take some marketing photos too, which will also be related to the YouTube video, or the demo video itself. It'll hit on like those topics, but also I love photography, and this would be, I think, useful for Sofa itself, but also good practice for me, like product photography. But I wanted to take pictures of the podcast player in like essentially real life scenarios for how you would listen to podcasts. So like some of the stuff I'm thinking about is, you're washing the dishes, right? So maybe I have, my phone with a podcast up, and there's like a sudsy wet fingerprint on the phone, and you can see the sponge and maybe a dirty dish or something like that. Maybe like cooking or driving, with CarPlay, or going for a walk or something. Like there's so many different scenarios that people listen to podcasts, but I think it'd be fun to take pictures around just some of the more common ones that I can share. Yeah. So, and then that's like the initial marketing prep that I'm doing, because then essentially I need all that material so that I can then start sharing stuff, right? So I can start reaching out to the press and start sharing stuff on social media and all that kind of stuff. And so that this part is like a little bit of a blocker right now that I need to do. But I'm hoping to do this video maybe tomorrow this weekend, and kind of knock that out. Because then once the video's done, then I can do all the other things. And like one little bonus benefit of, I think I used to always love the like big reveal with like something new. And it is fun. Like, I was just talking about the iOS 19 stuff. Like that's just a rumor. But like the big reveal that Apple does is super fun. And, cause like you don't know what's coming and stuff like that, but that's Apple, right? Like when I think about me, it's just me. Like it's, no big deal, not even close to the size or importance of Apple. And that's why I share stuff in progress too, because like, what's the point, right? Like, it's not like I have this huge audience and influence where I can have this like big reveal for, a new thing I'm working on. I actually think it's more beneficial for me to share stuff as I go, because people see it. And then like when I make this landing page, once it's ready, even if I don't launch for like a couple weeks after it's ready, it's fine. Like it's no big deal. It's not spoiling anything. I can just put like a coming soon, on the page and still share it, and then kind of get it out there. So I actually really love the freedom that I have with the information I can share and when I can share it. Like I said I was doing podcasts, this was like back in the fall. So it's not like news, right? At this point, it's just like, is it coming kind of thing. And it's like, it is. So yeah, I do love the freedom that I have with that. That is pretty nice. But Anyway, gang, that's it for me. That's what's been going on and what I'm working on and what's coming up next. So the podcast player is very close. Very close. And I think, if you're interested, definitely subscribe here. Subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube channel. I have a newsletter on Sofa, on like the Sofa website. So like if you only want to hear about Sofa stuff, you can just sign up there. And I only send emails there when there's actually stuff to announce, like a podcast player. So I'll be doing that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Bye.